Hi, you're listening to the Fresh Start podcast, and this is episode number 10. Hello. Welcome to the podcast. This is Marcia, and I'm with Stacy. Hey, Stacy.
Hello. We've just been chatting away here, recognizing that um, actually we get to see each other soon.
I
Whoop whoop.
know.
We actually get to physically see one another soon, but we've been chatting away and almost forgot to record.
I know. It's like, oh, we're supposed to record. Yeah, we got on Zoom and we've been catching up with each other's lives, which, yeah, we get to catch up in person
I
in
know.
in just a few days. I'm very excited. We're doing a little retreat. Actually, it's sort of like a reunion. It's not a
Hmm.
full-on retreat, but we had a retreat with God and my girlfriend's ministries back in January, and everyone just fell in love with each other so much, and we were like, we need to get together again. So we're going to one of the girls has a lake house about an hour and a half south of Nashville, and we're all gonna eat good food, laugh a lot, drink some wine, connect. It's gonna be fun. I
Yep.
can't wait.
I know. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
And it's June, it's Pride Month. And
It is.
I've posted a couple of things. I wrote a blog about why I think it's important to celebrate Pride, whether
Hmm.
you're gay or not. Maybe especially if you're not gay, it's important to
Hmm.
celebrate Pride. And I've already gotten lots of pushback on it, but that's okay.
Oh my goodness. It kind of helps us see where our circles are,
Yeah.
you know, who's who we want to spend more time with and maybe who we're not quite there with.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's we have a great conversation coming up and with our guest Lauren Cibene. We'll introduce her more in a minute, but we were just talking about that bridge building thing. Like,
Mhm.
I see people pushing back on things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm trying really hard not to push back on their pushback to the point that they don't want to listen anymore. You know what I mean? That's a
Yeah,
because I don't want them to not be engaged in this important conversation. Um, one person said the whole thing, well, if the Bible says the
yeah,
Bible is clear on this, well, yeah, it's
right.
not really that clear. It
Yeah,
is clear about loving each other, though. It's very clear about that.
very clear about that. And we have to steward our, whether you call it ministry or our um, capacity to connect with others, we have to steward that well.
That's
We only have so much of us to go around.
that's
So
true.
sometimes, it is about reaching out and it is about giving information and trying to educate people. But sometimes it's just using our energy to be with those who want us to be with them. And
I agree.
yeah, it's hard sometimes to know when you're
Yeah.
crossing the line.
Well, yeah, I know.
Yeah. My daughter and I joke about it.
Oh,
So
really?
Pride Month is something in our house that when she first came out, she was a teenager, and so she on June 1st she sent me this text that said, "This is my month. You should give me money to celebrate." So every year now, every year I send her on Apple Pay, I send her $1 just to
Oh,
because that's what she asked for like back in the day. I'm like, "Well, how much are we talking?" And she said, "No, just $1." And it was just a funny thing. So I sent my dollar
you
to
sent her a
her and
dollar
we
and
laughed. Yes.
and put in the memo, don't spend it all in one place. That's
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
gosh. Well, yeah, last week we had an amazing, or 2 weeks ago, we had a great guest, Jody Rose Gonzalez, and we talked about her work with art-based
Mindfulness. Yeah.
mindfulness. My brain just
Yeah.
went blank there for a
Look at
minute.
us completing each other's sentences.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a fascinating conversation. And what I didn't expect in that one was just how she and her family live. and some of the stories that she told. So we'll have to, just tease that. If you haven't listened to the episode, it's really fascinating.
It really is. It's really fascinating. There were so many aspects to it, just about opening your mind to creativity and how that can really heal trauma in your
Mhm.
life. And she talks about that. And she, like you said, she talks about the way they live, which is
Uh-huh.
interesting. And just, how the brain and the heart and creativity and all of that is connected inside of us and how it
Yeah.
can really be therapeutic. So you guys should go check out that
Yeah.
interview. It's really, really
And
good.
you know what, Marcia? I have heard from three different people about Corey Almond's episode, which was the one before that, just, reaching out to let me know that they really appreciated the conversation around aging and ageism, and that it just really resonated with them. So I
Okay.
just encourage people to listen to that one too.
Same. I've had so many
Yeah.
people comment about that episode and how it really opened their mind and also validated them
Yeah.
as they're struggling through aging situations with either themselves or with maybe some parents or whatever. So yeah,
Hmm.
y'all need to check that out too. But today
Today.
we have Lauren Cibene here. I started seeing her name and her book, which is called Tiger in a Lifeboat. Uh, it started popping up around different circles, a lot on some Substack people. And I'm telling you what, it's the first book in a long time that I literally didn't want to stop. I didn't want to put it down. I was like, oh, I've got to start dinner. I don't want to stop reading this book. You'll hear me gushing about it here in just a minute.
I
But we're really excited to have her come on. And we're going to break this up because we talked for
An
almost an
hour.
hour and we don't want to make these uh, podcasts too long for you guys. And because there's so much great information in this interview, I want to break it up so you guys can have some time to kind of think about all of this stuff. And then we'll air the second part next week. We won't wait 2 weeks. We won't leave you
Yeah.
hanging for 2 weeks to hear the rest of it.
Won't leave you on the suspension bridge. If you
That's
know, you
right.
know.
Oh, if you know, you know. There you'll listen and you will be in the
Yeah,
know.
you will know. So I love her bio.
Mm-hmm.
It's short and sweet, but very impactful. So
Mm-hmm.
here's what she says. Equal parts doubter and believer, Lauren Cibene explores the messy middle of faith, hope, and humanity through writing. Her work embraces life's big questions with courage and candor, creating space for readers to find their own stories within hers.
Mm.
And we are linking all of her website, which is a great place to land to find her on Substack and on Instagram and in all the places. And the book is Tiger in a Lifeboat: Discovering India, Deconstructing Faith, and Deciding to Trust Again.
Yes, definitely. If you're on Substack, you need to follow her. I just started following her. She's just a great writer. And so, without further ado, y'all stick around and sit back and enjoy this really lovely conversation with our guest today, Lauren Sabini. Welcome, Lauren Sabini, to the Fresh Start podcast. We are so glad you're here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm honored.
Well, like I was telling you before we started recording, I am in love with your book. Full disclosure, I'm going to be honest. I've had the craziest week and I kept thinking, I need to read her book. I need to read her book. And then I was running late and I thought, okay, I'm just going to skim through it and get those talking points. I couldn't put it down. I
Oh,
and I couldn't skim through it because your stories, I wanted to just savor every story. And I just felt like I was going through India with you, and I was getting to experience this culture. The way you're such a beautiful writer, and the way you describe all of the sensations and the sights and the smells and the taste of the food and everything, I just was I was just captured by it all. So I still have like 3 chapters to finish it yet because I didn't start reading it until a couple of days ago. And yeah, I wanted to read every word. You are a beautiful writer. Is this your first book?
This is my first book. Yeah, thank you for those kind words. It's a little bit of my baby, you know.
Well, I knew you had written a blog about this, right? So this
Mhm.
journey sort of started. Let's start at the beginning here. So I'm jumping ahead of myself. Um, you start right at the beginning of the story. You talk about what you call a breaking. And I know people have called things like life quakes, the time when there's before and after and things never aren't the same again. And that's kind of how you describe your breaking, but you don't go into detail about exactly what the breaking was. Can you explain why you do that?
Yes, yeah. So, like you said, this started off as a blog, just a messy, bloody thing that I was just kind of processing out loud. And it was shared by an author named Tish Oxenreider. She also has a book where she talks about travel and kind of like personal development, spiritual evolution, and travel. So she shared it, and then it started getting a lot of attention. Pretty unnerving all of a sudden. But on the blog, I just was intentional not to share super intimate details about that big traumatic event that I went through that I call the breaking. And what was amazing was that once it started getting a lot of attention, I was getting messages from people that would say, I also lost a pregnancy, or I also got a scary diagnosis, or I also was kind of booted from a spiritual community, like very hyper specific situations that people did not think twice about saying, hey, I've also gone through this. And none of those were my situation. So it
Wow.
was kind of an amazing thing where they were listening to the generics that I was sharing and they were seeing themselves in those details. And so when I decided to make this an actual proper manuscript, I decided to maintain that because I wanted people to be able to step into that journey themselves with whatever broke their heart.
I love that. I'm a singer-songwriter, and a lot of times when I'm writing songs, we try to do the same thing. We try not to get into specifics of what we're writing about because we want other people to feel their own journey
Mm.
in the song, like be able to put their own experience in the song. And that's what you've done with this so beautifully. So thank you for
And
that. Yeah.
I think it like correlates so well to deconstruction because there is usually the thing that starts it off for us,
Mhm.
and that thing
Mhm.
is always so different, but the journey itself is really similar. I can
Yeah,
really resonate
definitely.
with it. Mhm.
Mhm.
So after your breaking, you started really struggling with anxiety, depression, grief. You even said you were bordering on agoraphobia. Is that what it's called? Where you
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
can't,
agoraphobia. Mhm.
agoraphobia. There you go.
Yeah.
You started turning so inward. You didn't really know who to trust, which
Mhm.
I think that happens a lot when we have those breaking moments. We start questioning our own judgment
Yeah.
about people, about our choices, about everything. So, can you talk a little bit about what was going on with you in that moment?
Yeah, yeah. So that is one detail that I did end up sharing in the manuscript was that my traumatic event was tied to a fracture of trust. And for me, it splintered like when you like a rock hits your windshield. So it wasn't like an isolated crack that happened, like just an isolated breaking of trust between me and this one situation. Like it shattered to like my trust in institutions, my trust in faith, my trust in God, my trust in everything had shattered. And that included trust in myself. I think it's very easy when we experience a betrayal to turn inward and say, like, how could you be misled? How could you have fallen for this? Like, how could you have trusted so completely? Like, maybe you should have seen this coming, which of course no one ever can.
Right.
Um, but it's yeah, for me at least, it was like a spider web of trust issues, and that's part of why the backdrop of traveling was so like it was healing, but it was also very abrasive because the act of travel is inherently an act of trust when you're especially when you're in a place where you don't speak the language. You're not like an easy flight out of there, if something were to go wrong. It's like a very profound act of trust.
But you didn't really go on this journey to India as a way to, you weren't saying, it wasn't like an eat, pray, love choice. It was not like you were, I'm going to go on this journey and find myself. You went kind of kicking and screaming on
Absolutely.
on the first one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely did. In my post recovery, like not post recovery, I was very much in the midst of it. But as I was in the midst of it, I held very tightly to the story of Life of Pi, the book. And in that book, there is a tiger that, long story short, you're not sure if by the end of it, if it's a real tiger or if it's just kind of a figment of an imagination that the main character creates because that's what he needs to survive this very traumatic thing. So for me, I was trying to find my like alter ego tiger. And at that moment, that's when my husband came to me and he was like, "Hey, this tour is on sale and tickets, there's a fair sale happening on airline tickets to India. They're like $500, but we have to go in like the next few weeks." And so in that moment, I said yes. I said, "Let's go," because I was trying to embody this like ferocious, brave, courageous tiger. But in the moment, I felt very afraid. And in the book, I describe it as like I was holding on to this tiger's tail as she's like careening off to the other side of the world. But yeah, you're right. I was very, very much afraid.
But you wanted to, your husband was so excited about going. You were like, okay, I got to do this, right?
Yes, yeah. He was so ecstatic about it. It was a once in a lifetime thing. And yeah, for me, and I think this happens to several people, like if you're paying attention, there will come a time where you get to face a choice like this is something that's going to put you way outside your comfort zone. Are you going to endure the pain of staying the same or the pain of changing? Because both things hurt.
Mm.
So which one is going to serve you more, you know?
Yeah, that reminds me, I was looking at your Substack and I was thinking of something Marcia and I talk about a lot, which is the both and concept. Like, two things can be true and they're very opposing things potentially.
Hmm.
But you wrote, there are moments in life when the tension between the life you're living and the life you want starts to pull you apart, but no one talks as much about how your trust in yourself can also evaporate. After your assumptions and instincts are shown to be completely false and untrustworthy, you begin to think the same of the brain that misled you, your own brain. And I'm wondering, as a writer, sometimes what we write about helps other people, and I know that this book helps other people. What did it do for you in helping you sift through those two sides?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. This was a tough part of the writing process, if I'm honest. I liken it to like sitting down with my past self. And there were multiple versions of my past self. There was, of course, the person that I was when I was very afraid. And it was very, like at the very beginning of the story. And then as you progress, you watch the Lauren in the book become more comfortable and she becomes more trusting and she takes these little gambles with people and they, reward her trust. And so it's like a building back. So there was like Lauren in the midst of that. And I think that it's as a practice, sitting down with those past versions of yourself, whether you're writing or not, I think there's something very healing about that and allowing them just to exist as they were, not trying to fix them or try to massage them into some version that the present you can be more comfortable with, just allowing them to exist as they were, with their misconceptions and their
Mhm.
brokenness and whatever. There's something very healing about that. And for me, the writing of this book forced me to do that because I mean, I was like documenting these versions of myself. So while it's very painful, I do recommend it.
I like that. Yeah.
You talk about therapy being a big part of your journey too. You mentioned first a bad therapist that
Yes.
actually triggered you and you
Hmm.
knew that this was not the right therapist for you. That was, I think, a marriage counselor that you and your husband were both going to. And, I talk about that a lot too. Like all therapists are not the same.
Hmm.
When I encourage people to go to therapy, I tell them, make sure that you find one that's really in tune with you and works well with you because some of them just don't.
Yeah.
And, I wonder, in my experience, and maybe this is in same with you, I feel like a lot of pastors and religious leaders discourage us from therapy. Do you
Mhm.
agree? And if you do agree,
Totally.
why do you think that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And yes, the first therapist we went to, my husband and I come from that tradition where it's discouraged, or even just like people are like, "Oh, but you better be careful. Like, you make sure it's a Christian, like that's the only qualifying thing that they tell you to look out for.
Hmm.
So when we ended up going to this marriage counselor, that was the only thing that we were looking for because we didn't know what else, we didn't know. So when we got there, and yes, like there came a time where I was deeply triggered by the kind of misogynistic things that this guy was saying, and I'm reeling from this traumatic event. Like it was too much. Um, but yeah, we learned that the hard way, that that being a Christian therapist is the same as like saying make sure you find a Christian dentist. It's like, well, this is I don't really
I
this
like
is a
that.
this is like a medical professional, like that doesn't matter, like they need to be good at their job. They need to be good.
Mhm.
And like to your point, because this is very much, a personal thing, they also need to kind of be able to flow with you and your energy and what you need.
Mhm.
Um, and to answer your question, I think that some religious and like pastoral individuals that do discourage it, I feel like it's just a very blatant like red flag that they themselves have not done the work to heal. Like
Mm.
I feel like anyone who has experienced like being in the care of a really good professional therapist, I feel like they're only going to tell you like, absolutely, let me give you recommendations. Here's how to find one. You know what I mean? Someone
Mhm.
who's like, you better be careful. I'm like, gosh, you just haven't. I don't think you've done the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be misused. It can just be a tool for control too.
Totally.
And you talk about control and being able to release control. And as part of your exit from, or part of deconstruction, I should say, just recognizing in you even how you were trying to control situations and what it meant to release that. So what do you
Yeah.
think is so hard about that process? I know I could talk about it for an hour, but I would love to hear, like, for your journey, what were you trying to control, and what was it like to let that go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I found in my journey specifically, and I totally want to hear you weigh in on this as well. I know that for me personally, my journey with anxiety was deeply tied to my desire for control. And essentially, that was like very much, they were very rooted into each other. And it's very easy, especially when you have truly been victimized, to kind of wear the mantle of victim and kind of bypass responsibility. And I say this with all the gentleness in the world. Like I know this now in my healed state, that my fracturing of trust fed into my anxiety, and my anxiety fed me the lie that if I can control things and people and religion and God, if I can control everything, then I will never be hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's like a self-preservation. It's not rooted in like an evil desire to control things. Like it was rooted in fear, and it was rooted in, like a very unhealthy, broken soil within me. Um, but yeah, I began to see that like if I let go of that overwhelming like closed fistedness over myself and over God and over the divine and over people around me,
Mm-hmm.
it that anxiety just kind of like would start to melt away. And of course, it was a long process, but and that is what gave me kind of the ability to flow into that deconstruction journey.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I love the posture too, because it's so powerful, even when you think about those things that you're grasping onto, you're holding onto, and just
Mhm.
picture releasing them. Like it's something that we can feel as a sensation.
Hmm.
Um, and mine was just similar in that it was the thought that I could control the outcome of my marriage. Like I could do the work to make the marriage work. I could fix it. I could say the right things, do the right things. you know, the potential that I saw in the marriage would come to pass if I only did the right things. And at some point, I recognized that I was trying to control the outcome for something that wasn't fully mine to control. And I needed to be aware of that pattern in myself and be willing just to do my part and then see what happens.
Yeah, that's a scary place to come to.
Hmm. Sure.
I think it's easier for us to think like, especially as women, I feel like it's much easier to be like, no, I can do it. I can make it work. I can, no, we'll get there.
Hmm.
It's much scarier to be like, I don't know. And I have no control over this.
Hmm.
On the flip side of control, though, as I'm thinking about going back to pastors and religious leaders not wanting us to go to therapy, in my experience, it feels a lot about, when you go to therapy, they encourage you to go within, to think about yourself, to understand why you're believing the way you believe, to listen to your intuition, to get back in touch with that. And
Hmm.
sometimes, religious leaders, they don't want you to listen. We're taught, don't trust your feelings.
Yeah.
You can't trust your heart. The heart is
Hmm.
evil. And it's sort of, I think it's them feeling like they're going to lose control of their narrative to you if you go to therapy.
Totally. Totally.
You agree with that too?
Yeah. And they're not wrong, you
Yeah,
know?
that's true.
That's kind of the ironic thing, like
That's right.
especially like I hear a lot of people that they're afraid of, like there's like book bannings and all of these things are very similar in that like yeah, they're not totally wrong. Like when you
Right.
read and when you learn empathy and when you do the inner work and you do all these things, like you are not going to be easy to manipulate. You're not going to be easy to feed ideas to, without question.
Right. That's sort of like goes into this, anti-intellectualism that we're seeing a lot, I think, in America. They don't want you to be educated because if you start looking at any other resource, any other religion, anything else that's not in their box, then that could be trouble. Then
Totally.
and yeah, you're labeled as trouble if you doubt, if you question, if you do any of that.
Hmm.
But I want to go back to your book for a minute. So you agree to go to India. You're flying over there. You're fighting all of this anxiety on the way over there. And I have to say, on a side note, I've done a lot of international travel as a singer. We've gone all and I have that same kind of anxiety. I'm a creature of comfort and I like the food I know to eat. I like the
Hmm.
beds I want to sleep in. I like air conditioning.
Yes.
When I'm reading all about you're like, it's 106 degrees here in India, I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do it. So when I travel outside of the United States, initially, I would have so much anxiety. I could feel like what you were describing in that airplane on the way over. It's like, what am I walking into? What if I lose my passport? Or what if I can't get in? Or what if I'm uncomfortable there? I don't know. A million things would run through my head.
Hmm.
And then you get there, and there was this beautiful story about this woman that was in front of you because you said you couldn't even apply for a visa until you got to India,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
that sounds crazy. So you're there and all these people are in line trying to apply for a visa to actually enter the country after like what, 20, 25 hours of travel and
Hmm.
you're exhausted. And there's a woman in front of you from, was it Ukraine? Am I right
Yeah.
about that? Couldn't speak English. And she looks at you and trustingly starts communicating, not with her language, but with her, that she needs help reading this kiosk to apply for the visa because it's in English. So
Hmm.
this is such a beautiful story. Can you just tell a little bit, go into a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I was so anxious. This airport too, by the way, is one of the world's most dangerous airports. It just like I think maybe a week or so before we had landed there, a plane approached from the wrong way and hit the runway and like burst into flames, and a bunch of people died. Like it
Oh
was a
my
very,
gosh.
yeah, very. And my husband like very gently kind of broke the news to me, like this is the airport we will be flying into. Just you just need to know. Um, so I was very anxious already. I'm already wired. And when we got there, yeah, we joined this huge line of people, and we're just waiting for hours and hours to even just apply to get in. And yeah, there was a woman in front of me. The only reason I knew she was from Ukraine was because of her passport, which she was holding. I could see. And as we approached these kiosks that were unmanned, if you didn't speak the language on the screen, like good luck. And it was English, so like we were okay. But when she realized that she wouldn't be able to read the prompts, she just turned to me and handed me her passport. No words spoken between us. I don't know how maybe she saw my passport, or I don't know how she knew I spoke English, but she just handed me her passport. And it was just this really kind of like a mirror moment. Like here I am, like so worried about everything, so anxious. And there's a woman just in front of me, and she's so trusting, she's like so open. And so she stuck with us the whole time we were entering the country. You have to, you go to the kiosk and you have to apply for your visa, which, I'm like punching in her like passport number and all this like hyper delicate information to
And she's
help
just
her.
trusting you with it.
And she's not even like double checking. She's like kind of sleepy, she's like jet lagged. And but after that, you have to go and you have to get your passport stamped, and then there's like a currency exchange thing. And she stuck with us the whole time. She stood right beside me. I mean, this was hours. And there were moments where this was before too. We had like the translates on the apps on our phones.
Right.
Otherwise, I totally would have tried to engage with her, but there was something kind of beautiful about the fact that like I couldn't and she couldn't. We just had this kind of mutual trust and this mutual kind of like presence that we held together. And after we got out of the airport, she went her way and kind of like smiled and waved, and then I never saw her again, and it was this beautiful kind of like entry into that part of the world.
I wonder if that helped you with your anxiety in that moment too, because sometimes when I'm anxious, turning outward towards helping other people, like you suddenly get out of your own head, right? So now you're like, oh, okay, this person needs my help.
Yes.
And you become more engaged in helping rather than in your own head of everything.
Yeah, like spiraling down into all your worries.
Yeah. So maybe she was a little angel for you in that moment as
I
well.
I think so. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful story because you actually have a quote about, you talk about anxiety and the lie that anxiety says. One of the lies it says, it's never we that are untrustworthy. It's always they are untrustworthy. That's such a deadly sleight of hand that fuels racism, sexism, ageism, almost all the isms. So you think we're taught as Americans and Christians, maybe, to not believe in the inherent good of people, but rather the inherent bad of people? Because this girl obviously was just like, she just trusted you. You were you were an other, but something in her just felt like, oh, I'll just get her to help me, and wasn't fearful of you. But I feel like we're kind of taught here to be fearful of everyone that's not like us in America.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And it's something that really troubles my soul. And I think like going back to like the desire for control, like these high control religious environments, I think that believing in our inherent brokenness, everything so much hinges on that in these high control religious environments. Because if we approach it by in this posture of I'm inherently beloved, so much of their control fractures. If I approach it like I'm inherently broken, then they're able to sell me lots of stuff. They're able to convince me lots of things. They're able to position themselves as like, well, I need to lead you because you cannot, like you said, you cannot trust your heart.
Yeah.
And this I think it spreads politically too, because if we're able to say you can't trust the they, whoever the they is, then you're able to say, well, here, take my money, build the wall, deport them, like we're able to hand off so much control if we just buy into the lie that humans at their core are broken and evil and to be mistrusted.
Yeah, this reminds me of Danielle Schroyer's book, Original Blessing. I don't know if you've ever read that, Lauren, but it is an amazing book, and we had the opportunity to talk with her too. And I think you guys could sit down over tea and have a great conversation.
It's on my list. I have not read it, but it is on my list.
Yeah. So this is where we're going to end our conversation with Lauren Cibene today. But make sure you check back here in 1 week, not the usual 2 weeks, but 1 week. And we're going to finish this really amazing conversation with author Lauren Cibene. Again, the book is called Tiger in a Lifeboat, Discovering India, Deconstructing Faith, and Deciding to Trust Again. We'll see you guys back here in 1 week. Thanks for listening. This episode has been brought to you by God and My Girlfriend's Ministries. If you're looking for a faith-based community where everyone is accepted, all beliefs are welcome, and no judgment, check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org, where you can find more information about our book clubs, both in person and online, retreats, and events in your area. And also, you can get some information about one of the things we love to do, which is our Single Moms Christmas Blessing Ministry. So go check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org. We would love to have you a part of our community.